guest today is Rob Hagee from BMO Field, Sports Field and Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment in Toronto. This is a new format that we're doing here, and I said to those of you who got here earlier, I haven't done this before. It's just going to be a question and an answer, which is what we typically do while we're out at the sports field, but we're looking at things. And I didn't want to get into PowerPoints and presentations that might scare potential presenters away, and there's no obligation for them to sit down and take their valuable time to put a presentation together for us. But I've put together a bunch of questions here, and I'm simply going to ask them, and Rob can respond and take this in any direction that he'd like. And I encourage you as well to ask questions from the crowd. I'll repeat them so that these can be captured on the video. My hearing's not great, as you guys know. I wear hearing aids, but if you shout them out, I'll be able to repeat them. This could last 30 minutes, could last 65 minutes. I'm not sure how this is going to go, and we'll keep an eye on the time. Excuse me, but you know, traditionally, these things go from 3:30 until, I think our class time is 6:30 or 7. I'm not going to keep you that long. But please don't panic if we're going, 15 minutes or something. We're indebted to do that. So let's go. This is Rob Hagee. I'm gonna. He has been the sports field manager. What's your official title? Director of Grounds for BMO Field and the TFC practice facility up in Downsview. Both fantastic facilities, and anything you want to say just to get started, Rob?
About myself or about the facilities? I'm
okay. About yourself. What is your turf education training and history?
Always worked at a golf course. Started at Rattlesnake when I was 16, I think. Kind of watched Bill McAllister at the time. I was like, he seems to have it pretty good. He gets a truck, he gets a house, he's driving around a golf cart. Doesn't seem like that bad of a gig. Started in the bunkers there, and then I went to Ridgetown College for horticulture originally, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Horticulture gave me the ability to get into the greenhouse industry, into the tree industry of horticulture, whatever, propagation, and there was some turf classes in there. Finished the diploma out in Ridgetown, really enjoyed the turf side of it, was still working at Rattlesnake at the time. And that's why I came to Guelph, because I was still young, I didn't really want to finish school either. Horticulture was really good to me, liked the turf stuff, so entered this, did 2 years here. During that, went to Barbados for my internship. Built a golf, no, that was Sandy Lane, so I was at 2 18s and a 9 down there. After I was completing
So
school.
you did your internship, you organized it to work internationally while you were here at Guelph.
Yeah, I'm born in Barbados, though, so I didn't need work permits or anything like that. So it's, when you call an island that's 14 by 21 and you have education from the University of Guelph and you want to come down there and work on a golf course as an intern, it's like, hey, come on down. It's not costing us anything, basically. Yeah. That being said, I was treated just like any other intern that they get from down there. I think I made $100 American a week or something like that in my internship. So I lost money. It cost me money to go down and do my internship. But the connections I made was the important part of the internship, as it should be for all of you. It's not about making $17 instead of $16, because who cares about the dollar when you're 40 years old and you could have had the connections. After I finished my program, I went back down to Barbados to build a golf course. Not the same golf course I did my internship on. Built a golf course called Abe's Hill.
How important do you think that is? We've talked about this, I think, already, guys. How important is the growing, the construction of a facility, in this case a golf course? How important is it to these young people?
Oh, it's huge, because you can look at pictures and you can look at the drawings and all that, but you don't really understand the bones of the course unless you saw the pipe going in the ground, you saw the holes dug. You gotta really know it then. Like the practice facility, there can be something broken, everyone's searching and they're looking for it, and I can just walk right to it and be like, here it is, and within 4 or 5 feet I know where it is, right? Because I was there from the start. I don't know if I'd want to do another grow-in now that I have a kid and stuff. Like, it takes years off your life, and you're working 20-hour days and irrigation alarms in the middle of the night, and you're flying around and all that. So it was a lot of work, but at the time I was single, I was in Barbados, I was 25.
And having a good time.
Having a good time.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
It's like I worked landscape construction for many years, and I traveled throughout Ontario, Ottawa, Thunder Bay, and things like that. And it was pretty cool as a young single guy to be in a hotel room, and there's a bunch of guys on the crew, but lifestyle and work-life balance become more important as you have family and other commitments. So.
Yeah.
Um,
So, a few years in Barbados, which led me to BMO Field, and
Yeah, and how did you make the transition from golf courses to sports fields? What happened?
the recession hit Barbados a few years later. The golf course kind of started shriveling up. It started transitioning from the construction to the maintenance, and when they offered a lot of people maintenance contracts instead of their construction contracts, a lot of people were like, that's not what I was getting paid before. And it wasn't as attractive to stay down there. I was getting a little older. It wears you out a little bit being down there. The corruption and the labor force and stuff wears you out. Corruption being an example of you go down to I went down with the golf pro to pick up his thing from customs, like his shirts and glasses.
Yeah,
and all
his
that kind of
shipment, his inventory.
Opens up the shipment. The guy's wearing brand new Oakleys. Box is torn open. Bunch of Oakleys are out of the box. Bunch of shirts are out of the box, and you can't really complain about anything because you can either
They
have
got you.
what's left or nothing at all.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And then even ordering pesticide fertilizer, all that, waiting for it to come from Florida on a boat, and this and that. It's a lot. To
But
grow
the
that.
transition from the golf course environment, I think with the exception of one person here, I always get that mixed up. I think with the exception of one person here, these folks are all golf course focused, as were you. And now you're like, what?
Yeah, it
You
was-
say the recession hit, but
The recession
couldn't
hit
you have
Barbados.
just
I
gone
came
to
back
another
to
golf
Canada.
course?
I could have. I came back to Canada, and the opportunity arose itself at the same time. So I put my name in the hat. I was 25 at the time, or 27 at the time, or something like that. I probably came in a little bit cheaper than some of the other people that were applying, the Dean Bakers and those
Yes,
types of
yeah,
people.
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So I probably came in a little bit cheaper because I was a little bit naive maybe at the time. I got the job, but at that time it was also when we converted BMO Field in 2010 from artificial to natural grass, I was the only groundskeeper, right? I was the irrigation guy, the spray guy, the painter, the net guy, this guy, that guy, the everything guy. In the last 10 years, we've grown that into a department of 14 people. We built a practice facility with 4 fields and on and on and on.
Yeah.
BMO Field, it's not just a square of grass. In the last 10 years, we've spent $10 million on that 2 acres of grass to make sure we have, I'd say, one of the top 20 pieces of grass in the world, basically, for sports fields.
Funny way to put it, huh? Yeah, pieces of grass.
Yeah.
And we might as well just go into our next discussion, next part of discussion. What is the history of BMO Field? I mean, it used to be
So there used-
natural sod, then it went to artificial.
Yeah, so it was 2006. It was constructed for Toronto FC. It's owned by the city, run by Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. 2006 construction with artificial field turf. At that point, we were a very modest club. We noticed we were having trouble getting any sort of player to play for us. And when visiting teams like LA Galaxy would come, David Beckham would play 5 minutes because he's not playing on artificial because he's read the reports and he doesn't want to shorten his career, basically is what it comes down to. As we get more and more serious and we want to start winning, that's when if you don't convert to natural grass, you're going to have a harder and harder time attracting young, good athletes.
Yeah.
So that's when we converted to natural grass 2010. That was
2010.
2010 was the conversion, $5.5 million. There's 42 kilometers of pipe underneath the field. I can control soil temperature. Middle of winter, I can turn the soil up to 15 degrees if I want, 20 degrees, whatever it is I'm trying to do.
And what's that? Is it heated?
Heated alcohol.
Heated
Glycol.
alcohol can both warm and cool the soil,
Not cool.
right? Not cool.
Only,
okay.
they
Only
can
warm.
cool. There are ones in South America and stuff for the World Cup. All those fields, like the Dubai fields, they all have basically cooling pipes like you'd build a hockey arena on to cool the soil so that they don't cook, basically, in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
That's why the next World Cup, the Dubai one's the first time the World Cup's been held in December, because you can't play soccer in Dubai in July because you'll cook.
So did you say 42 kilometers?
42 kilometers of 3/4 inch high density poly. And then it's heated by 2 million BTU burners.
And these burners, folks, it's like a furnace room for a house. You head off the field, you just go back into the the guts of BMO Stadium, and here's this room filled
Well,
with
each
these
burner is like the
boilers.
size of this table kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then the drainage lines are hooked up to sub-air. Sub-air is used in golf, it's used in sports, it's used all over the world. It's basically a glorified wet dry vac. 100 horsepower vacuum that you hook up to your drain line, so you can either pressurize it, add air to the soil profile when you can't aerate and do those types of things, or suck the field dry basically when it's raining. Why wait for gravity when you can turn a fan on?
Just suck it out.
Suck it out.
Yeah. So you could have a major rain event and dry that field out in
Basically,
short order.
yeah, because the sand drains 18 inches an hour or whatever it is. The sod's going to be the thing that's slowing it down.
Let's talk about the turf. This is real turf, but it is mixed with artificial turf. Rob, can you
Yeah.
explain that to us?
So original conversion happens, team gets better, team starts entering more Champions Leagues and things like that. So instead of our season going from April until October, November, our season starts going from February until December, because we're starting to play against Mexican teams and all these types of things. And they don't care what the temperature is in Canada, you gotta play, you're the home guys. The quality of our team now, they'd rather play outside on frozen mud, basically, than inside the Sky Dome on artificial turf. That is how much professional athletes hate artificial turf. I shovel natural grass fields in February when they're starting to practice. They'd rather me shovel the grass than play in a bubble. Just because playing in a bubble and the warmth of a bubble on artificial turf is not going to help them when they go down to BMO Field and play on natural grass in -10.
Keep talking, Rob. I gotta get a new fan.
So the $5.5 million conversion, our team gets better, it gets more demanding. They start playing in February, and they start noticing, even though I can defrost the grass, I can't make the grass grow in February. I don't have light, I don't have this. So the field's blowing apart. Through that, we invested another $2.5 million in grow lights. I don't have a picture of it, but if you Google it, it's easy to find. We basically roll out 1.5 acres worth of grow lights on 9 carts. It's 660 1,000 watt high pressure sodium bulbs. They hang about 6 feet over the canopy. They heat the air a little bit. They provide the light. And that's what lengthens my days in February, March.
And not only is it getting light to the turf to grow, because Rob has to be prepared to have his turf ready by mid-March, did you say, or
Yeah.
February?
Well, this year, January.
January.
Actually, yeah.
So it's not only growing turf in the middle of the winter, and we'll talk more about the bubble that goes over the turf. It is also because BMO Stadium, they built upper tiers of stands. You may recall that. How long ago, Rob? The upper
Oh, the
tiers.
expansion.
Yeah, the expansion.
Yeah, originally we had no roof, like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and then when the Argonauts joined us, we did an expansion of the stadium. We added like 12,000 seats, 15,000 seats, put a roof structure in, all this. So basically a roof is worse than your trees around your green, because at least your trees lose their leaves. A roof doesn't lose its leaves. So we built this stadium into a model basically, and we showed ownership how I'm not going to get sunlight. Like there's 8 yards of my south grass that does not see sunlight for I think 3.5 months or something like that, right? So if you guys want to be successful and you want to have natural grass, now you have to invest in grow lights, because otherwise we're going to be resodding and it's going to be a problem and all that. So,
Yeah. So these grow lights not only are to extend the season, but to react to architecture. The expansion, the growing of the stadium seats put Rob in a situation where he would not be able to grow grass.
Yeah.
And Rob, I do want to speak again about this artificial turf that is threaded into the real turf. Is there any way you can explain that?
Kind of. So the grow lights. So final piece of the puzzle was we did hybrid. It's very common. It's in I think over 100 stadiums, 150 stadiums around the world. Lack of a better explanation, it's a giant sewing machine that goes across your field. Every 20 mils by 20 mils, it injects a needle that's 200 mils long into the ground, and leaves behind a big piece of artificial fiber, basically. So the same artificial turf that they use on artificial turf, but not cut, just a great big long strand of it. So basically, if you take a shovel and you try to jam it in the ground at BMO, you're going to have one hell of a time, because it's that reinforced.
So this is just for playability.
Just for playability, because like you can't take a divot. You could slide tackle as hard as you want. You'll cut it. You'll take some grass out, but the levels of the field will always be the levels of the field, because that 20 by 20 mil spacing is enough. A lot of people are like, oh, why don't they do it closer? Why don't they do it closer? I did the math. The 20 by 20 mil spacing, if you unwound all the plastic and you tied it end to end to end, it goes around the Earth 1.5 times. So it's that much plastic, right?
And
Which
how
is
long,
terrible.
how long would
but-
that, we did a tour of the sports fields here at Guelph, and Frank Kane said, look, artificial turf has a lifespan of, what did he say, guys, 10 years or something like that? It was something like that.
Yeah.
And
that-
what are you
that
gonna
is
do
it.
with these strands, or will they last even longer?
There's people that have had them for 20 years and they're still
Okay.
holding up just
Okay.
fine, because unlike artificial turf that's completely exposed to the sun, a well-grown field, these artificial fibers aren't actually being exposed to the sun or anything. And a lot of what the degradation of artificial turf is just the sun burning it out, basically, making it
Okay.
brittle. So some people say 20 years, I budgeted for 10. And at that point, we'll rip it all out, we'll get new sand, and we'll do it all again.
You said to me before, Rob, that, and I hope I heard this right, that BMO Field is a big USGA green.
Yeah.
Do I have
12
that
inches
right?
of sand, 95% sand, 5% peat, herringbone drainage, pea stone, choker layer.
So it's
USGA
the
green.
same,
It's a green
same
without
principles,
Same principles.
very same principles as the USGA green.
Yeah.
So those
And the
are
guy that actually designs the stadiums, he says USGA stole that from him. He had 12 inches before they had 12 inches, and they stole the 12 inches from the sports
Okay,
side.
all right.
I think it's a pissing match between the two designers, but.
Rob, I'm gonna shift gears here a bit. So I hope you get an understanding that when Rob said this is the most expensive, 2 acres, did you say? 2 acres of turf around, or one of the most expensive 2 acres around. I mean, with the heating system under the ground, the hybrid turf, the grow lights, and a bubble, I didn't talk about this, or ask you this, there's a big bubble that goes over the field that you guys can work
Yeah.
in any weather.
Yeah, in the winter, basically there's a big tarp that we like fasten down into these big eye bolts down the side of the field. There's a big tube that goes underneath the middle of this tarp, and we can inflate that tube 20 feet. So basically like 75% of the field we can mow. We can be minus 10 outside, we can heat the air underneath that. As well, we're trapping the heat from the ground, because it is a non-permeable tarp. So we can basically mow the grass, spray the grass, 75%, 80% of the field, without getting cold in the middle of the winter kind of
Do
thing.
you use a lot of product on the turf there? Is there a lot of
A lot of
fertilizer and?
fertilizers, a lot of three-prong approach, the granulars, the soil apps, the liquid soil apps, and the foliar apps, with my soil samples and my foliar samples being sent to labs and telling me what to do every couple of
So
months.
it would be the same protocols as
Same as
a golf?
Same as when I was on golf, same kind of golf. I know golf guys that don't do soil samples, and I look at them sideways, because I don't know how you know where to start if you don't do the soil test.
Okay. So soil testing is critical.
Soil testing, even tissue testing and stuff, soil testing will give you a good idea for the season what you need to do, because you're not going to change the bulk recommendations on soil overnight, because a lot of the time it'll say something silly like 55 pounds of pee per 1,000 or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's not achievable.
Yeah.
So the soil, like I'll do 1 or 2 soil tests a year, just to give me an idea, but the foliar is really just like a 1-week picture snapshot of what
Okay.
is happening in that
Okay.
plant.
Okay.
But when you're confused on why is it doing this, why is it doing that, it gives you the ability of what is it lacking.
Do you get weeds?
No, not really. And we never sprayed a herbicide at BMO Field.
Yeah.
And we've never sprayed an insecticide at BMO Field, and I do 1 fungicide app at BMO Field at the end of the year for snow mold. And that's it.
Okay. Okay, all right. It's a little bit different. Again, I'm gonna keep putting questions out here. And please, my friends, if anything comes to mind, would you speak? Okay, here we go.
Rob, how long did it take for that sewing process to happen?
How long did it take for the sowing project? The installation of the hybrid turf?
8 days, 24 hours a day. They had, I think it was 3 teams of 3, and they just keep on tagging out, and the machine doesn't stop, basically. We only had 8 days. Otherwise, they would have to stop and remobilize and then start 2 more days later kind of thing, so.
And where did
very good
this
process.
service come from? Europe?
Holland. A
Holland?
lot of my stuff comes from Amsterdam,
Okay.
or Holland, sorry.
Other questions, guys?
Because
Sorry.
North America is so far behind. In sports fields, North America is so far behind. I don't really poach the North American market, so to speak, for ideas and.
But you do have a strong network, Rob. We've talked about this
Oh, yeah.
before. You have a very strong network in North America with all sorts of NFL, Major League Baseball, you name the
Yeah.
sport, you're connected with these folks, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the Americans, like, they're good, but I just think for soccer especially, like, some of those sacred grounds in England, or those stadiums have been standing there for like 200-300 years, and I think those groundskeepers have something that we don't know yet. But I kind of take both markets. It's a joke of mine because I think Americans are too American to say that the British built anything right. So they're never going to use anything British. The British are too British to say the Americans built anything right. So the good thing about being a Canadian is like, oh, that piece of equipment's nice, and that piece of equipment's nice, and that piece of equipment's nice. So I just pick what I feel is best.
Well, speaking of equipment, that's one of my questions. What are your equipment needs and inventory? I mean, are you out there with walk behind mowers cutting this?
Yeah, BMO Fields walk behind mode, 32-inch wide reel mowers, self-propelled obviously, a lot like what you use on a golf green, but 32-inch wide.
Would you ever use a triplex on the?
We did originally, until we went to hybrid, but when we went to hybrid, we didn't want any hydraulic leaks or anything like that, so the 32-inch reel mowers we use are electric, which removes fuel and hydraulic fluid and all that type of problem. Because if you were to spill those contaminants into the soil and you have hybrid, you're gonna have a hell of a time getting that soil out and then once you put the soil back, you're gonna have to hand stitch all that area you dug out, and it turns into a thing.
Yeah, it's just not like you
You don't get the chainsaw and just drill it out and go along your business.
What other equipment let me put it this way, what's unique to your sports field environment? Or is everything pretty well the same as you'd find on a golf course?
The main thing with the hybrid now is the players, no one can kill my grass quick enough, and it can't decompose naturally anymore, and I can't hollow tie-in anymore because I have all these hybrid fibers all over the place.
So you're not aerating?
So you can solid tie-in,
Okay.
you can't hollow tie-in, because you'll rip out all the
Pull
fibers,
all the stuff
right?
out.
So organic control is a big part of ours. Like right after a game's done, we have a big tie-in rake that we'll send out, and we'll almost do more damage than the players do, because we need to remove that decomposing grass before it kind of lays flat and turns into what we call snot, because it turns into this black.
So it's not thatch?
No, beyond, like it's past, like it doesn't turn into thatch because it just doesn't have that natural decomposition process.
Yeah.
So what happens to these hybrid fields is they start getting slimy, basically. And that's why this year, since I had no games, we actually removed all our grass this year. You run a phrase mower through hybrid field, it's this big thing that grinds it basically. And somehow all the plastic's left behind and all the grass is gone. And then so COVID hit, we knew we weren't gonna have sports. So let's rip our grass out because
So you
we
did
can.
it again?
Yeah.
You just did it 2 years ago.
The stitching. No, we didn't remove the stitching. We removed the grass.
Yes.
Because over time, you get POA, you get this, you get that. So we phrase mowed it in May, ripped all the grass out, brought 80 tons of sand back in, overseeded it, tarped it, and then, so this field you see today at BMO Field is only 6 months old.
So you seeded this time instead of sodding as you have done in the past?
Yeah, because when I brought the sod in, it brings 4 years of crap with it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When you seed, it's clean. So I used the pandemic as a chance to remove the 4 years of sod that came in last time. Right?
Very
Now
cool.
I got a clean field that'll take 4 years to get where that sod was.
So unlike golf courses, which have had record years of rounds going through, your facility was dead quiet.
Yeah.
And you could do all sorts of work on it.
Yeah, within reason, because they don't want me spending too much money, but if you can save money in the future by spending a little bit right now, it makes sense, right?
One thing, Rob, I remember from past meetings we've had is the paint. Remember that the Argos of the CFL have joined, much to Rob's disappointment, and it's not as though he hates football, Canadian football, but just because it makes things much more challenging. The CFL and TFC now share that BMO field, and of course, markings are different. And sometimes you are faced with a CFL game, I'll pick on a Wednesday, and that Sunday you've got a TFC.
On Friday.
Okay, so it's an even quicker turnaround.
Yeah, no.
And one of the things that Rob has told me before is the painting of the lines, the layout of the field, the markings on the field. It was very difficult to get. Well, explain this to me. Paint that would last but would also wash off.
Yeah, so basically Toronto FC was the original tenant. We bought the Argos. Toronto FC doesn't want to know that they have another tenant there because football and soccer players just don't go on, right? If it was rugby, it would be fine because in England, rugby and soccer share
Facilities all the time.
right? So I was told the Argos are coming in, how are you gonna maintain this? And that was part of the grow lights and all this other jazz that I got because I needed to maintain the field for TFC with this big lumbering sport being played on it every week. So for the paint, they basically came up to me, we need a clean field. Like every other stadium in the world, if you watch a soccer game after a football game, you see the football line still and they're playing soccer. That is unacceptable for Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment basically because the soccer players don't want to see those gridiron lines.
They don't want any reminder.
So we brought paint in, I think it was a dozen different types of paint from all over the world. We did these paint trials. Obviously we ended up using the same paint that Wembley uses because they do the football conversion as well, but we still had to try it out for ourselves. So we ended up finding a paint that's durable enough that it stays for a game, it stays if it rains, it stays for all that type of stuff. But there's a product that you can spray on it afterwards, you leave it for 10 minutes, and then you come along with the hose and you wash it off. I make it sound like a simple and quick process, but it's like 12 guys will take like 8 hours to remove an entire football field, right? There's a lot of white paint out there, and especially, luckily for CFL, I have a 3-foot white line down the side, compared to the NFL, they got a 6-foot white line down the side. But there's a lot of paint out there that needs to be removed, and then we need to match. Sometimes if there is more paint than we can remove or damage, we might have to mask some of it with some green pigment in the sprayer, some green top dressing sand, whatever it is we need to do to, sometimes it's lipstick on a pig is what I call it. It's not a great looking field, but we make it look good for the night. But for media, that's part of the battle.
Yeah. And it's how the field presents itself on camera, right?
Yeah.
That's really critical.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't think about these things. You know, you watch a sporting event, the markings are on the field or the goal posts are taken up and put down for various reasons. And you think, well, geez, it just is. But it's a big consideration. And as Rob's saying, especially when you're sharing two sports types in one venue, it's not easy. What is a typical day at BMO? And we'll focus on BMO. Please remember, folks, that there is a fantastic practice facility up by Downsview Park. I mean, it's really stunning. I love it.
Yeah, it's as nice as a Champions League.
Yeah, this
European
is,
style.
just very quickly, the practice facility includes artificial turf.
4 natural turf, 1 artificial turf, sub-air with heat on 2 of those turfs, so we can still heat the soil and that type of thing out there.
And
but that's triplex mowing and things like that. More riding equipment because it's just more acreage. It doesn't matter so much.
Yeah, and someone working at BMO would have experiences of both facilities?
I kind of float people around. If someone has a preference, someone lives closer to one, I can do a little bit more at one, but usually I kind of float people around so they get good experience.
So Rob, jumping back to my question, what is a typical day of work or in a broader time schedule, a week of work at BMO? Are you guys cutting grass every day?
Oh yeah, in the heat of the summer it's every day, but what's typical anymore? This year wasn't typical by any means. Like I was saying to you earlier, this year I saw my grass go yellow, I saw it do this, I saw it do that.
Because you just didn't want to put product down.
Why am I going to spend money? Why don't I help the mothership, as I called it, and not spend money if I don't have to? Me not using my grow lights, I probably saved $250,000, $300,000 this year. There's big money that I save by just not putting the inputs into the grass, but the grass isn't being beat up, so it doesn't need the inputs there.
Yeah.
So typical days were, mowing every single day, spraying a foliar every 2 weeks, spraying a soil up in between those 2 weeks, doing a granular every 2 weeks.
Do you roll a lot?
Rolling probably 3 times a week after games, dethatching every week, raking every week.
How do you dethatch?
Verticutters.
Verticutters.
And then that tie-in rake that I was talking
Okay,
about.
so you will verticut.
Yeah, no, and then we'll catch it all in the buckets, and then we'll go with rotary mowers after that just to pick up all the crap and put it in bags and get it off the field. Because it's all about controlling organics is our world.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just gonna, jumping again, where did you learn all this?
On the fly.
Okay.
I was thinking
Not
about it the
very
other
comforting,
day.
huh, guys? Not very comforting. I made it up.
I know, I thought about that the other day. There really needs to be like a turf technologies part of the program. Like upcoming turf technology.
I know, Rob.
right?
We've talked about this ever since I got here.
Oh,
Of
did you?
course-
Okay, I was thinking about it like 2 nights
We've
ago.
talked about this before,
Um,
and this program, let's face it, guys, we talk about golf course environments. When we talk turf, we're talking golf course environments. We are not and Cam Shaw, the new manager of this program, who you guys will do a lot of work with this winter and then again next year. I think he might be the guy, because always remembering, I'm not a turf manager, I'm a landscape architect. So my understanding, I'm a little shaky already, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want to, lead the charge taking us into another type of study for turf management. Cam will be the boy to, in this case, the gentleman to.
It's transitioning over from sports field to golf. Like the Oakmonts and those places of the world have sub-air systems. There's people buying grow lights to roll out onto the greens at night. It is transitioning into that world,
Yeah.
right? Augusta has grow lights.
Yes,
right?
and the sub-air
And the sub-air
systems,
and that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So it is transitioning into that world. But definitely, our return on investment is we usually have 40,000 people in the stands every week buying beer and jerseys, right?
Yeah.
So it was easy to pay for things.
Okay. How do you keep your staff happy and motivated?
Well, that one's tough. I let my staff do what my staff need to do because they're very confident in what they're doing. Right down to my laborers. Like, I don't hover over anybody. I don't watch the punch clock. I assume you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, kind of thing. I have the trust in someone that I sent you to do a task. I shouldn't have to come look. But at the end of the day, I'm a very observant person, and when things aren't done, that's when I have a problem with people. Very quickly, people understand that if you work for Rob, it's a great job. If you think you can kind
I
of...
sure have heard that, Rob. No, guys, in here, I'm putting in a pitch. Should any of you be looking for an internship outside your comfort zone, that being maybe golf course management, I've heard nothing but good things about working at BMO and just what a rewarding experience that is. We'll talk about internship opportunities at the end of today, but like, do you have, this is so superficial, but do you have barbecues on Friday, or do you, hey guys?
We try to get together, but it's such a small group. Like, it's 6 at the stadium, 6 at the practice facility, or 7 and 7, or however we might split up. That, like, they're always going for drinks, or like they're buddies.
Yeah.
Like, I try to say, like, when I was younger, I was a part of that group, and now I'm not a part of that group. I'm the director of grounds, and I come in and everyone's talking.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think age is one way of separating yourself from your team. But you have to remember, this is an interesting point, that when you are in a leadership role, you can't be everybody's friend. You can't be the staff, the work crew's friend. You want to have a good relationship with them, and hopefully friendship is part of that. But you can't satisfy them all the time.
No, because when you get too chummy, discipline becomes harder and harder, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes more and more awkward for that discipline, and then you discipline someone, and then it spills over into the social side of it and all that, right? Because when I was younger, like, I had friends working for me.
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
I lost it, so no, someone quit one day, and it's like, hey, Andrew, what are you doing? Hey, you want to work for me?
Yeah.
Cool, come on
Yeah,
now.
come on in for a
But
month.
then he worked for me for 8 years, right? And by the end of it, like, he didn't really want to be there anymore, and like, it made it harder to discipline someone that you know. And I went to college with him, and I shared a house with him, and all that, right? And it was great working with him.
You've already got his respect.
Yeah, and it's great. The work relationship's great because you know each other like that, but it definitely makes discipline harder. Because I am the boss, and sometimes I just got to go and do other things, and on the outside it might be like, where's Rob again? But you don't know what I do.
Yeah, wearing the, I mean, we've got a couple people here who are on their way to leadership roles already. And you never realize, because we all start, pretty well all of us start at the bottom and work our way up. You don't realize how challenging it is to be in that superintendent's role, or the manager's role, the boss's role, if it's a landscape company or something like that. You don't know the crap they put up with every day. And yeah, I guess there's some situations where someone in a leadership position can say, put their hands behind their head and feet up on the table and say, what do I do today? Should I go to Kentucky Fried Chicken for lunch, or whatever is going on? But most of the time, that role you think is so cushy has all sorts of challenges and complexities that are just so frustrating.
Oh, like TFC loses a game. Phone rings 11:30 at night. President of Toronto FC. What the fuck is wrong with the field?
Yeah.
Reaming me out in February when I can't grow grass. Why can't you grow grass in February?
yeah.
You wanna have this conversation?
Yeah. Or when the expansion came along for it to accommodate the Argos and the new stadium was built, and you're saying, hey, now I've got a problem, they're saying, we really don't wanna hear about it. I mean, I know they are super accommodating, but, it's just. Here, what type of turf is grown at BMO Field?
Sodded Kentucky bluegrass, but like I said, I ripped all that out. We have a little bit of bluegrass. I'd say it's probably 20% bluegrass backing, but perennial ryegrass is what we traditionally grow.
Perennial ryegrass.
Soccer players prefer perennial ryegrass. They can say it's greasier, and it is. If you try to slide tackle on bluegrass versus ryegrass, it's two different experiences. I've seen soccer players run and try to do a knee slide at BMO when it was bluegrass and just eat the sod immediately. Just knee slide, boom, face into the sod. Versus knee slide on the rye, you can actually like slide out for like 10 feet or whatever it is. It's just a greasy grass.
That's quite interesting because, Rob, before this year, I think it was bluegrass.
Yeah, it was always blue. It was always, but they always wanted rye, but I couldn't do the rye because blue gave me the rye zones and the reinforcement, but now since I have the hybrid, I don't need the blue, I can go with the rye.
Are there any special challenges to growing ryegrass that you haven't experienced before with the Kentucky Blue?
No, because we always had a little bit of rye in there. As soon as football came along, we always had rye because rye's germination's a little bit quicker, a little bit more aggressive grass.
Yeah. We've talked about the management program, just to some degree of depth already. Recent special projects, well, you ripped up the field.
Yeah.
And
again.
Yeah, again. How often do you expect you're gonna have to do that?
In the perfect world, most hybrid fields in England, they do it every year. The end of every season, they rip the grass out and they start again because you have that 5% artificial left, and you germinate grass, and 2 weeks later, you can basically play on it because the hybrid's going to hold it together, and the grass doesn't really matter. It's just aesthetic.
Say that again. The grass doesn't matter.
The grass is more for reinforcement. The reinforcement is coming from the hybrid. The grass is for the aesthetics in between the hybrid that's there and playability.
Hey, just while I'm thinking about it, I hope you understand the reason that professional athletes prefer real grass is based on safety, right?
Yeah.
That real grass is, and I think we talked about this with Frank Keynes again, real grass is more responsive for play, but also more accommodating to keep the players safe. Yeah, forgiving was the word I was looking for. Reading down my notes here, what professional organizations do you belong to? CGSA, Landscape Ontario. Is there any professional associations you are?
Well, I'm always at Landscape Ontario because their IPM is the greatest conference going. $100 and I get all my credits in one day.
You'll learn about this, guys.
Well, that was $50 this year. Yes. I didn't need to go.
In your careers as turf managers, you may have to acquire continuing education credits for your integrated pest management credential. And you have to do this every year. So turf managers are always looking for venues, destinations to provide them with this training and their IPM credential. And some of them are more expensive than others. Landscape Ontario Congress, which is traditionally held in Toronto every January, right away in the new year, for $50.
And the best trade show in Canada.
Yeah.
Beyond golf, like if they have every piece of equipment in that place for snow removal, for this, all the golf guys are there.
Yes.
That is the best trade show in Canada.
Keep that in mind. I don't know if your superintendents are going to Allo Congress, but just like Rob's saying, it's huge. Like it's really huge. Lots of things to see. And once again, your IPM CECs, your continuing education credits, are cheap, and I think you get a lunch with it, which is a little mind-blowing.
Because it would be $100 with lunch. One day you're done, and there's other places it'll take 2 days, and it'll cost you $700 for the same amount of credits. Right? So it's just Landscape Ontario is one that I'm part of.
OTS, the Ontario Turfgrass Symposium is.
I always talk at the OTS.
But
organizations as part of it. The Sports Turf Managers Association is the big one in the States for Major League Baseball, NFL, and all that.
I think one thing I'm trying to say when I asked Rob what associations does he belong to, and I might, as we go through the next 4 or 5 weeks of visitors coming to the classroom like we are today, I strongly encourage you to join associations right now to be a member of the Ontario Golf Course Superintendents Association is relatively cheap, $50 I think for your students or something like that. To be a member of the CGSA, the GCSAA down the States. There are so many services provided by the GCSAA. Yeah, I know it's an American organization, but there's resume writing workshops, there's just so much.
On the job boards alone.
The job boards right there are so helpful, and that ultimately next year, if COVID would just leave us alone and you guys get to go to the golf industry show and participate in Turf Bowl, you need to be a student member of that organization anyway. For sure, $50 here, $75 there, it adds up. But it's the type of thing, speak to your employer and say, hey, could you buy my OGSA membership this year? Could you, support me in that? Or just look for these little tidbits, okay? Here, going on with my question, and aware of the time, we're doing well. I'll sort of start heading into conclusion here. Rob, do you continue to do training and education? You sort of answered that in that you get your IPM CECs every year. How do you stay up to date with the world you live in as far as turf management goes? Do you have a private library that you...
Big part of it's the networking, and chatting with people and touring, and when I do go on vacation to England or the States, it's not unlike me just to look on the STMA website, find out the groundskeeper at that stadium. If I don't know him, give him a call and say, hey, I'm so-and-so from Toronto, can I come look at your stadium? And every grass guy wants to show off their stadium, so it's like, yeah, come on down, blah, 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 blah. So like, and then you tour their stadium, and then you get some ideas because they're doing something a little bit different from you, or whatever it might be. So there's the continuing education, but I'm also up at the front a lot of the time, talking at most conferences.
You certainly are, yeah.
So I'm learning on that side as well to help promote the industry and push the industry and all that.
Yeah, good. Two more questions, and then guys, I certainly ask you to share your thoughts today.
Yeah.
Actually, you know the hangar around the park?
Yeah.
Are you guys in charge of maintaining that at all?
No, that's
Can you
next door to
repeat
us.
that question, Rob? I didn't hear it. Rob, can you repeat the question?
The hangar, the facility next door, it's an indoor soccer facility next to Toronto FC's practice facility.
Okay.
Our junior clubs will use it once in a while, but we don't have anything to do with the maintenance or operation of that. We just maintain our property up there.
Two more questions. Rob, what do you think the future holds for young people entering the turf industry? And specifically, how do you think the sports field industry might work out for some of these young people here today? Are we in a... I'll tell you, I'll start this. I believe this is a perfect time in the golf industry, to be sharing or getting out there and making contact. I believe you will have meaningful employment right away. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Would you say the same in the sports field industry?
Oh yeah, no, and the sports field industry is only growing in Canada, in the northern climates. I think
No
Toronto,
pun intended there, right? Yeah.
We've proven it right. Now I'm having inquiries from Edmonton's going to probably put natural grass in for the Eskimos because, not the Eskimos anymore, now they're Edmonton Football Club.
Yes, the
Sorry.
Edmonton Football Club, yes, yeah.
They're probably going to go natural grass because they potentially are a part of the World Cup bid for 2026. Montreal is probably going to put natural grass back into the Big O. They're putting $225 million renovation into the Big O.
$225
million renovation for a part of the World Cup bid. There's a whole bunch of practice facilities that need to be very quickly put together for Toronto and all these sites for the World Cup bid. And even when I drive by some of these like Oakville Sportsplexes
Well,
and
that's-
stuff, I look at
that's
them
gonna
and I'm
be-
like, wow, that's impressive. And I know what some of these managers get paid, and they're getting $160,000, $180,000 taking care of municipal soccer fields.
There,
right?
you just said it. You
They're
said
the head
what I
guy,
wanted.
and like they got to do the gardens and they got to do everything else. But like, they don't work weekends. They get holidays. They're going to get a pension. They're going to retire at 50. The grass can be full of weeds and disease because they're not allowed to spray because they took that away from me. So like, their job's not bad. It's not as high paced as for me. Like
You
thrive
thrive
on
on
the
that,
energy
yeah,
of
the
professional
excitement
sport.
of it. Yeah, let's not forget, and I'm gonna keep on saying this, yep, right now your intentions are for the most part to enter that great world, that sexy world of golf. But there's something to be said, and I'm gonna keep saying it, guys, there's something to be said about a $100,000 a year plus gig with the city of Guelph Ian Ferguson is head of sports fields here in Guelph. He's got about 3 or 4 Guelph turf grads working for them. They're working 36 hours a week. They have pension, they have benefits, they have year-round employment. Yep, that might mean being in arenas in the winter, but it is certainly an option when work-life balance becomes more important.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And then
Yeah.
for every one superintendent making 6 figures, there's probably a handful of Parks and Rec guys making the same 6 figures.
Yes.
Right, with less stress.
Rob, my last question to you today, and once again, you guys in the crowd might think of some things as we conclude here today. Internship opportunities at BMO for this summer coming up.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a bit? Is it good? I mean, COVID casts its cloud over so many things, but what do you think this year? Should these guys be reaching out to you? Will you give me a
100%.
posting or?
Yeah, no, I'll be passing my information. Well, you have my information, but I'm always
Yeah.
looking for interns. This summer, I'm pretty confident we're gonna be having lots of games with no spectators, basically, both CFL and Major League Soccer. And even if we don't, we've spent $10 million on 2 acres of grass in the last 10 years, and they can't just walk away from it. So Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment on March 13th, all part-timers got laid off. I think there was 600 of them got laid off
Yes, I
on
heard
March
about
13th
that.
because we don't have games. Like, we don't need ushers, we don't need security guards, we don't need anybody. The only 12 that remained were my groundskeepers, right?
Because grass keeps growing.
grass keeps growing. That's what, you can have all the COVID you want. Grass keeps growing.
Yeah.
And I have a good enough relationship with the presidents and the ownership that, like, they know my saying is I plan like a liberal and spend like a conservative, and they know that's how I am. And for an example, I think my budget right now is favorable $665,000 or something silly, right? Just because, like, my grass still looks good, but like I just don't need to spend it. So with all the debt with Matthews and with all these athletes' contracts that we still got to pay, and we're not making a cent, just take the money back, because I know it'll be there when I need it. It's there.
Yeah. You get what you want, right?
Yeah. I'm a good salesman.
Yeah. Internship potentials are there for BMO Field if you're a Torontonian and you're living downtown or you're up north by Downsview and you think, man, I want to try something different this year, which I think is good for all of you to consider. It may not work out for all of you, but I think it's something for you to consider.
When a lot of people, like Aiden was a golf guy,
Yes.
he worked for me, and now he's a superintendent of a golf course out in Alberta,
Yeah.
right? So you can go back to the golf world. Ryan, who was an equine guy, he was a horse guy.
Yes,
He came and worked for me, and then he thought, oh, golf's better than that, and he left, and then he came back, because he found out that sports fields is a little bit more forgiving on the schedule than golf, right? When we don't have games, we don't need to be there till 5 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
right? Golf has to be there every day, all day.
Open up your eyes and open up your minds and consider other options while you're young. Some of you are further along in your golf course experience. Okay, keep going. But for others of you who are 19 years old, 18 years old, and thinking, man, I'd like to try something different, I think this is a great opportunity. Any questions from you guys before we wrap it up today? Any questions at all? Yep.
Did you get rings?
Yeah, I got a Raptors championship ring. It's worth $15,000 because I'm the groundskeeper for them as well, for the practice facility. And then I got a TFC championship ring. I think it's worth 10 or something like that.
So what do you do with those? Do you keep them or do you, can you
sell
sell them on, $15,000 buys
yeah,
a
because
jet
it's
ski.
one organization, right?
Yeah.
It's MLS, it's got my name on the side, the whole thing, right? It's one organization.
Good question. Hey, you know that Cam Shaw asked me, or shared with me, that in the communications class, you guys were just having a conversation and suddenly it popped up. And I'm just gonna ask for your input on this, Rob. How do you ask for a raise? I don't know who asked that question in Rob's class. I thought it was an excellent question.
I
Christian.
basically did
thought it
that
was,
like a year ago. I didn't do that, but I laid it out that, like, why is my name in the newspaper that my grass is shit and I'm getting paid this? Like, I started laying it out that, like, this is way too high pressure of a job and I'm sitting at the table with presidents and CEOs and all this, and I'm the groundskeeper. That's when I became the director of grounds.
yes.
At that point, the sales was, here's Green Bay Packers structure, director, groundskeeper, 2 assistants. Here's Liverpool structure, director, groundskeeper, 2 assistants. Here's this guy's structure, And at that point, if you're, they gave me the promotion of director, but if you're gonna promote me to director, they gave me more money. Part of the thing is, like, I wanted to be a director is because if you got, my job is more, at risk as a
Yes.
director, right? Player gets pissed off, Michael Bradley gets pissed off one day and says, fire that guy, I'm gone. In a heartbeat, right? So at least if I'm the director, they gotta pay me out more. And that's all it is, right?
But how do these, you're at a very different level and you're dealing with a different management level. How does Christian ask, if Christian worked for you this year and then said, next year, following graduation, I'm going back to BMO, how does he justify getting a raise or asking for a raise from you?
Well, I think it's self-improvements.
Self-improvement.
Be like, hey, look, I went and I've signed up for the IPM credits. I've signed up for my IPM license.
I've
I've
got my
signed up for
spray
my
license.
I got and got my spray license. I've done this on the side and that type of thing. And I'm more likely if somebody works 50 hours a week for me, 60 hours a week, he comes in on his day off, he does this, I'll give him the raise, right? The guy that wants to work 30 hours a week and then he looks at his check and he goes, I don't make enough money, right? And he comes and he says, I need a raise. Why don't you try working 40 hours and then we'll talk about a raise. Right?
So you're, how many of you have asked for a raise in your career? I never have. Sterling, you have. Doug, you have. I don't think I've ever, man, I guess when I was a kid working for this Danish guy who had a little landscaping company and I was making $2.50 an hour. Yeah, believe it or not, $2.50 an hour. And a colleague who had not worked at the company as long as me got a raise to $3. And that really infuriated me. And I went to the boss and said, you gave Mac, his name was Bob McTavish. No, he's not out at Westmount anymore. How come you gave Mac a raise and not me? And I've been here 3 years longer. And this guy sort of hummed and hawed about it, which offended me completely. But I've never really asked for raises. Being here at the university for so long, you get the, cost of living raise, and if you move from one job to another and you go to a different band, a raise comes with you. But I thought it was a really good question, Christian. As young people, how do you ask for more money? And I think you
I ask for more hours before I ask for more money, and the money will come.
Ask for more hours.
Yeah.
Yikes, that's not what I want to hear. That's not what I want to hear.
But that's my world. Right?
Okay. Okay.
The one thing I could tell you is I've had an employee ask me for, I don't know if it was a promotion or more money, but he wanted his promotion based on what everybody else wasn't doing. Well, that guy sits down more than I do, and that guy does this, so I deserve to do this.
Takes a
It's like,
smoke break.
yeah, that guy takes a smoke break, so I should be getting more money than him.
That's not
But
good.
that's not the way this world works.
You got to
No,
put in time and show
yeah,
value.
show what you can do. It's the
I
same
think-
with sales reps. When
Yeah.
they come in and it's like, oh, don't buy so-and-so's nitrogen, that's crap, right? Buy mine. Don't sell me your product based on them being bad. Sell me your product
Right.
on you being good, right?
I think what Cam Shaw had said to this class was, or in communications was, Cam said it so wisely. It was something like, how have I made your life easier as a manager? And maybe I'm saying this all wrong. How have I made your life easier as a manager through my skill set? You no longer have to worry about greens being cut properly, the basic things like striping. I can do a spray application even if it's with a backpack sprayer, and I can do a mix. It was just
Well, that would be, now that I think about it, that would be a good way to sell it, is when I started here for $15, I could do A, B, C.
Right, there's what he
Now,
said.
I can
There's
do
what he
X,
said.
Y, Z.
Yeah.
Why am I still at $15?
Yeah.
Right? That might be a good
That's
approach.
how he said it. That's
Right.
how he said it. Folks, we've been at this for an hour. I think that's pretty good. Is there anything else you need to hear right now? Any other comments or questions? Any other insight from Canada's premier sports field turf grass manager? It doesn't get any better than this, folks. And by better, I mean more recognized, more respected. Rob Hagee is at the top of that pile in this country and communicates with all the great sports field managers in Europe and North America. Anything you want to add? And again, you might be saying, no, my world.
What are some of the nicest, or in your opinion, sports fields that you've ever gone to?
What are some of the nicest sports fields that Rob has gone to?
Oh, depends on what what you're looking for. Like one that I went to the old Tottenham Stadium when it was still at the other stadium in the other corner. They've rebuilt since then.
Where's this?
Tottenham. in
Oh,
England.
Tottenham, okay.
So they have a stadium, I don't even know how many, let's call it 90,000 people, 100,000 people. You should Google it when you get home. So their grass breaks into three, rolls underneath the stadium, is grown by LED lights, because underneath that grass is a full-size NFL artificial field. Tottenham will be the first, most likely the first NFL team outside of North America. That's part of the process of this investment. Wembley used to have the football games every couple
Yes,
of years.
yeah,
because
yeah, that's
Tottenham's
right.
going to be taking that.
Yeah.
Similar, Las Vegas, they have a field similar to the Phoenix Cardinals or Arizona Cardinals. Their field, they take out the south end seating and the whole field rolls out into the parking lot, sits out in the sun, grows the field out in the sun. When the game's about to happen, you bring it back inside so that it's air conditioned. That's what it's all about, is an air conditioned atmosphere for the players and for the fans. Bring the grass back in, play your event, put the grass back outside. So those are really cool setups. Like they got a mobile piece of grass. But like my setup's up there with your Wembleys. My setup's better than Green Bay. My setup's better than a lot of these places anyway. But a lot of the stadiums, when you walk into the Wembleys of the world and you're in a 90,000 person stadium, you just look around. Like my stadium's only 32,000 people.
It's still pretty cool to be on
It's
that
cool,
field.
but when you walk
Yeah.
in at 90, it's just like, oh Jesus, this is insane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cool ones I've walked into, but I don't really have one that I put on a pedestal. Going over to Europe actually brought them off the pedestal. I had them in my mind that they are.
And you say, hey, these are no different than what I
Yeah,
do.
I thought like their grass is perfect. They're not gonna have any lines. They're not gonna have this. They're not gonna have that. Once I got there, I looked at their grass. I was like, oh, mine's better than this one.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hey,
So it was sobering and.
Yeah, yes.
Because
yes.
when, even in the golf world, when you watch something through a lens that's made to make things look greener, it's not what's there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's sobering going and touring other facilities and seeing
Yeah.
that everyone's the same.
Good.
We all
good.
bleed.
Yeah, we all bleed, we all bleed. Folks, don't leave yet. Tomas, could I ask you to stop the recording now?